Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching Really Dicey. This is Manny.
And I'm RJ. Today we are reviewing Avatar Legends, the role-playing game by Magpie Games.
This RPG is based on the very popular Avatar cartoon series from Nickelodeon, both the original series, The Legend of Korra, and other media. This book is approximately 300 pages with 10 chapters, including 3 appendices. Magpie Games has successfully crowdfunded this game last year, and because I backed them, we received a digital copy of the core rulebook. While I am a fan of the Avatar cartoon series,
I am not. I personally haven't watched much of either series. So you'll be getting both a fan and an outsider's review of Avatar Legends, hoping that together we'll give you the best and fairest review. So we're going to go through our favorite parts of each of the 10 chapters and then give you our final judgment. Now, I'm an outsider to Avatar, so maybe I'm way off base, but I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments.
Chapter 1, Welcome to the Game. This chapter is the introduction section. It gives you an explanation of what is inside the book, including what is an RPG, what makes this game different from other RPGs, and additional materials that you may need. This is a good section if someone wants to play an Avatar role-playing game, but has very little idea of what a role-playing game is. Chapter 2, The World of Avatar. Here you have a bit over 60 pages of Avatar lore. You get not only setting material for Aang and Korra's timeline, but also the 100-Year War, the Kyosha and Roku eras. You get some great information about the four nations and the series philosophy about balance. Now, fans of the series will find this section very familiar, but I did enjoy how the set information was organized and how the writing captures the tone of the series. Chapter 3, The Fundamentals of Play. This game uses the Powered by the Apocalypse rule system, meaning it uses 2d6 to resolve your character's actions and skills. The Fundamentals chapter is great if you are new to the Powered by the Apocalypse system, but if you are familiar with the rule system and role-playing games, then you may skim most of this chapter, but I said skim, don't skip, as there are some new mechanics unique to the game that you should be aware of, like balance and reverse moves.
Yeah, whenever your character does something in the fiction, it might trigger a move. And so you roll 2 6-sided dice and you add them up total. A 7 or higher basically succeeds, sometimes with some sacrifice. And a 10 or higher succeeds with awesomeness. So you might get additional bonuses or better results. So for example, the intimidate move, when you intimidate an NPC into backing off or giving in, you roll 2d6 and you add your passion, which is one of your stats. On a hit, which is a 7 or higher, the NPC chooses one of these 4 options. They run to escape or get back up, or they can back down but keep watch, or they give in with a few stipulations, or they attack you, but they're off balance. But if you roll a 10 or higher, then you pick one of those and they can't choose.
Chapter 4, Making Characters. So just for those of you who aren't aware about the Powered by the Apocalypse system, you don't make characters like you do in other role-playing games. That's what the playbooks are for, which we'll get into in a moment. This section, about 20 pages long, is really about what kind of character you should be playing. This section is really a role-playing guide. It discusses what your group's motivations are and how being in a certain era may affect that. This game is really pushing that the focus of the game is about enacting positive change, not bending or fighting.
Yeah, so let's go through some of the character sheet to get a feel for this game. So there are 10 character archetypes, or they're called playbooks in this system. So for example, the Guardian archetype defends someone close to them. They're steadfast and watchful. Or the Icon archetype that comes from an ancient tradition and inherits some serious standards to live up to. So you would play the Icon if you want to be torn between your heart and your duty. The next part is martial training. Your character can have martial training in one of the 4 element bending abilities, or in weapons, or technology. Each of them has its own special techniques. So for example, airbending has a technique called air cushion to soften the blows that an ally takes. And the technology has the entangler technique, which entangles a foe with a weapon or device. There are even specialized bending techniques such as blood bending. And those techniques are either one of 3 levels, either learned or practiced or mastered, which comes into play during combat. Then your character has 4 stats. creativity, focus, harmony, and passion. And they all have a value assigned somewhere between -1 and +2, usually. Your characters then have 5 fatigue checkboxes. And when you get exhausted or injured physically or emotionally, you check off these fatigue boxes. And if you've marked off all 5, then things get much more difficult for you, but you're still in the action. And to clear that fatigue, you can rest off screen, which clears some fatigue. But the primary way to clear fatigue is from other player characters providing guidance and comfort to you. There's a move called Guide and Comfort, which incorporates more role-playing than just clearing fatigue. For example, one of the options in that move is that you ask one question and they must answer honestly. And then there are 5 conditions that you can be inflicted with: afraid, angry, guilty, insecure, and troubled. And if you've taken all 5 of those and have to take one more, then you're taken out of the scene. You're unconscious, you're injured, or whatever. But you can also clear a condition, such as clearing afraid by running away. They can also be cleared through the guidance and comfort of your teammates. But the most interesting part of a character is the balance track. Each playbook has 2 opposing principles on it. So the Guardian has self-reliance versus trust, and the Rogue has friendship versus survival. And there's a track of 7 checkboxes between those 2 principles. And your balance shifts according to what you do and the influences of others around you. In fact, there's a move called Call Someone Out, where you openly call on someone to live up to their principle. It works on NPCs and villains too, but you have to know what their principle is. And a success here with this move means that they have to act as you say. But other outcomes include them turning the tables on you and demanding that you act in accordance with one of your principles. There are other balance moves, such as live up to your principle, deny a call out, and lose your balance, which is when you've shifted your balance past the edge of the balance track and a dramatic result unfolds, such as you lose control of yourself in a destructive and harmful way.
Chapter 5, Core Moves.
This chapter contains a lot of the basic moves that you use a lot, but it also explains how combat works, which always interests me. So let's take a look at that. When characters are involved in combat that isn't high stakes or interesting, the combat system isn't used. Instead, you just rely on the basic narrative moves that cover a lot of action and antics. But when it's a climactic combat scene, then combat is a series of exchanges. And exchanges can be interspersed with other actions. They don't have to go back to back, such as, an exchange and then he monologues and then more exchanges. At the start of each exchange, everyone picks an approach, and they're one of these 3: defend and maneuver, advance and attack, or evade and observe. Then you roll with that approach to see how many techniques you can use during the exchange. So if you roll a 7 through 9, you can use 1 basic or 1 mastered technique in this exchange. If you roll a 10 or higher, you get to choose from some options, like you can use 1 practice technique, or you can use 2 basic or 2 mastered techniques. The basic techniques that everyone can use are very general and cover most action, such as seize a position, strike, or bolster or hinder. But one of the more interesting basic techniques is called test balance. In this move, you challenge an engaged foe's balance. You get to ask what their principle is, and they have to answer you honestly. And if you already know their principle, then instead you shift their balance away from center by questioning or challenging their beliefs or perspective.
Chapter 6, Playbooks. There are 10 playbooks to choose from that are reminiscent to characters you're familiar with in the Avatar series: the Adamant, the Bold, the Guardian, the Hammer, the Icon, the Idealist, the Pillar, the Prodigy, the Rogue, and the Successor. Playbooks are my favorite thing about Powered by the Apocalypse system, as you fill in the blanks up to your character's history and motivations, and check off the moves, your special skill sets that you want your characters to have. And nearly everyone's moves are tied heavily to the soul of your character. Chapter 7, Advancement.
Yeah, advancement in this game is interesting. At each session's end, you answer these questions. 1, did you learn something challenging, exciting, or complicated about the world? 2, did you stop a dangerous threat or solve a community problem? 3, did you guide a character toward balance or end the session at your center? And then 4th, a special question from your playbook. Whenever you answer yes, you check off a growth box. And when you've marked 4 of those boxes, then you get to do some character advancement. And there are a few options there. But these are the behaviors that the game rewards.
Chapter 8, Running the Game. For those of you who have played RPGs before, this is the GM's Guide section. At first glance, some of the advice given feels like items you've read in other role-playing guides, but this section's greatest strength are the tips of how you can keep the tone of the game so that this feels like an episode of the show. For me, the guideline section gives you a perfect list of things to consider in your setting and world building to make your players feel that this is another exciting chapter to the Avatar saga. Besides discussing threats and challenges that fits to the theme of the world, there's a great section about fleshing out your minor and major NPCs and alternative ways of defeating them besides fighting. And speaking of fighting, at the end of the section discusses combat and how mending can be involved in difficult scenarios. Chapter 9, Seasons and Campaigns. This section is an expansion of the last chapter's Running the Game, where it goes much deeper into the game's tone and expands your game to long campaigns or seasons. It gives advice about story pacing, crafting a finale, and creating new seasons for your game. Chapter 10, Running Adventures. Besides some tips to move your game along if it becomes stagnating, there is one large adventure here called The Vanishing Act, with a whole bunch of adventure seeds, NPCs, advice, some elements of mystery you can add to your game, location descriptions, and how to change story details if players want this adventure in a different era. At the end of the book, there are 3 appendices. The first appendix has 8 pages of moves and bending techniques for your characters. The second one has 7 pages of material, including stats of some famous characters from the series like Aang and Korra. And the last appendix has materials to keep track of your game, like a rules reference and a campaign worksheet. So, in conclusion,
yeah, as a role-playing game, I think this game is great. I'm really impressed with how the designers created rules to directly support character development and immersive storytelling. Many times that's just something that players and GMs bring to the game almost entirely on their own, with little support from the rule system. But the rules allow for rewarding role-play experiences, even in the middle of combat, which other role-playing games struggle with. The combat and bending rules are driven by the fiction. So the fiction comes first, then the rules. In fact, the phrase in the book for this is, to do it, do it. If you've never played a role-playing game before, this book does a great job of explaining how that all works at an entry level, and you'll only need a couple of six-sided dice to play. But I love that the game focuses on character motivation and connection and challenging beliefs. This helps make character arcs actually happen. It really steps far away from a character just being a bag of stats and inventory. And social conflicts are front and center in the rule system. They're equal partners with tactical and magic rules. The balance mechanic is really the star of this game. Now, while I know very little about the Avatarverse, I just learned about the importance of cabbage from reading this book. This book made me want to know more about this setting. Putting the world aside entirely, as a game, I think this is one of the best powered by the apocalypse games out there, although I haven't seen all 30 or so. I would love to see more games take this direction. Overall, I think this game is impressive. I think Avatar fans won't be disappointed, and fans of role-playing games in general will really enjoy this game. I'm not a fan of Avatar, and I would highly recommend playing this game.
And as a fan of Avatar, I definitely highly recommend playing this game. It's an excellent piece of work. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy quality review content and interviews with your favorite writers and creators. We'll see you next time.